Hello, my name is Lucy Bento. I'm a clinical psychologist and I work with the Sutton Children and Young People's Wellbeing Service. Today I'm going to be talking about anxiety and how to manage it, as well as building resilience to help you to manage this challenging time at the moment. So the plan for this recording is to consider the current situation you're in, and then to go on to think about transition in terms of trauma and disasters and recovery, briefly going into that. Then anxiety is the central part of this presentation, thinking about what anxiety is and also strategies for how to manage that anxiety. We'll also be thinking about building resilience both individually and together to help you get through this time. So let's think about the current situation. So after hearing about coronavirus or COVID-19 in China at the end of last year, it seemed to arrive pretty suddenly in the UK in March with everything shutting down. Everyone was asked to stay at home. Most families couldn't send their children into school. People generally couldn't go into work, and the government was giving out lots and lots of advice within all this closing down. And there was lots of concern about contracting the virus. Schools, however, were asked to stay open for key workers to allow the NHS to continue to run, for shops to fill their shelves, etc. These are unprecedented times with lots of anxiety around the uncertainty. So all of this change and uncertainty has resulted in a lot of anxiety about our health, others' health, washing hands, how to carry out new guidelines, what other changes are going to happen, how to learn to give online lessons, how to learn about what bubbles are, how to make sure you have the things you need, about the children and how they will learn, about what's happening with children who are at home and are vulnerable. I could go on. So schools are at the front line and are playing a hugely important role in keeping communities going in these challenging times. So first of all, I want to thank you for all the hard work that you've already done and you're continuing to do, supporting children and families in your community. In having such a key role at this challenging time, the resulting uncertainty can increase anxiety. And we thought it might be helpful for you to be armed with more knowledge and skills to manage it. So although it continues to be a challenging time and there will be some difficult consequences from this situation, it's important to hold on to hope. Disasters and emergency throw light on the world as it is. Some people who study disasters frame crises not just in terms of what's lost, but also what might be gained, seeing glimmers of possibility. Every disaster is different, and it's never just one or the other, loss or gain, always coexist. Rebecca Solnit used case studies of disasters to argue that emergencies aren't just moments when bad things get worse, or when people inevitably become more scared, suspicious, and self-centered. Instead, she described the ways in which disasters open up human reserves of improvisation, solidarity, and resolve, pockets of purpose and joy, even in the midst of loss and pain. Solnit's book was not a call to celebrate disaster, but to pay attention to the possibilities it might contain. It can be helpful to try and hold on to this, to look out for those possibilities during this challenging time. So, as I've said already, we've got a really challenging situation in terms of practically trying to adhere to lots of changing guidelines, which might be scrambling with your head. And then add to that all sorts of feelings, which are understandably running high. Worry, like how will we adhere to these guidelines? Fear about who might die from the coronavirus. Sadness about so much that's changed and lost. Concern about the children that we might not have heard from. Anger about all the changes and whether teachers aren't really being heard or thought about. Loss in terms of just things aren't being the same, or maybe we've lost somebody. Bewildered in all the changes and how different everything is. Some people might be feeling more positive feelings like relief in terms of things beginning to get back to normal. Or some people might be feeling excited about being able to go shopping again, or there's children coming back to school. But anxiety is really in the centre of a lot of the feelings that are going on right now in terms of the uncertainty. And so that's going to be the focus of the presentation today. So here's a picture of our brain. And as it says, their brains are built for survival. So they look out for danger. And the idea of that is that to help us survive. So as humans, we have this really big cortex, which means that we're capable of thinking, analysing, planning, and many amazing things. Mostly that's the job of the frontal lobe there. The other part of the brain I want to bring your attention to, however, is the amygdala, which is known as here as the reptilian brain. This part of the brain can be found in all other animals, even reptiles, as you might guess from what they refer to it here. And this part of the brain comes to life when there is a perceived threat or danger. So, and by coming to life, this old reptilian part of your brain overrides all of your lovely thinking ability. So in terms of thinking about the threat from the current situation that raises anxiety and fear, this part of the brain can take over, making logical and calm thinking impossible. If we look at this feeling thermometer, and we look down here, the lower numbers are green, and that might be beginning of the summer holidays, or I'm sure there are times when you're feeling relaxed and happy. But in terms of the teacher's profession and working in schools, I'm guessing it's quite often a lot higher than that, at least a 5, I'd say. Hard but in control, maybe higher than that in terms of the challenges that normal teaching, everyday life throws up. You add into that this current situation and you're already quite high up on that thermometer. It takes a lot less to shift your brain into that threat mode. So that's normal, it's okay. We all have this brain and we all have this threat mode which can take over. But what I want to do today is to kind of go into more detail about anxiety so that you can have some strategies to try and reduce that thermometer, reduce the temperature, to enable you to continue to think more clearly and function as well as you can. So anxiety, as it says here, anxiety is a hot emotion, which I'll go into in a minute in terms of how that you can use that information as practical, in a practical way. But in terms of anxiety, it's often thought about in 3 different ways, in terms of bodily sensations, anxious thoughts, and anxious behaviour. So I'm sure most of you know a lot about this, but just to recap, the bodily sensations that are linked to anxiety are associated with adrenaline and is often known as the fight or flight reflex. So it prepares your body for action. It prepares your body to fight or run away. So to do that, your heart beats faster to pump the blood around your body, you sweat to cool down your body, your muscles tense, you might tremble, your body is heating up, ready for action. In terms of anxious thoughts, when they become a problem, it's when we're overestimating the danger and we're underestimating our ability to cope. And in terms of anxious behaviour, what we often want to do when you become anxious, when there's a perceived threat, is to run away, like you might do if there was a tiger or a lion or something dangerous that they would have been back a long, long time ago. But the problem is with doing that is that we don't get a chance to learn that things might not be as bad as you think that they would be. And also you don't get a chance to experience coping in challenging situations. We also seek reassurance when we're anxious. So how you deal with your anxious body reactions. So kind of practical strategies that you can use to help to manage those anxiety feelings and help keep that thermometer down and your brain functioning as well as it can. So like I said, anxiety is a hot emotion, which is like anger is also hot. And we can practically help with managing that by actually just physically cooling ourselves down. it might seem surprising, but actually just having a cold drink or splashing water on your face, cold water on your face, having a walk in the cool air, you see the man there with the fan, trying to cool yourself down can actually physically help when you're really feeling very stressed and anxious. Another thing we can do is to fight, because kind of contradict the other aspects. So when the adrenaline runs through our body, one of the things we do is we end up breathing quite quickly, and then this adds the oxygen in our system so we could run away. But when actually there isn't a line to run away from, then it can feel quite stressful. So what we can do, and we can do this anywhere really, is to control our breathing, to slow it down. So as in the man in the picture there, if you put your hand on your chest and another hand on your belly, slowly breathe in, make sure your belly is rising so that you're fully extending your lungs. Breathe in, breathe in for a count to 4, hold it for 7, and then push your breath out for 8. That's the ratio that's apparently really helpful for reducing your breathing, and it can help with sleep and other things as well, so try and practice that. The other thing you can do with your breathing is to concentrate on your breathing whilst you're doing it, and imagine letting go of those anxieties and worries with every breath. So you're pushing them out, you're pushing them away. Imagine them floating or dissolving. Finally, in terms of that practically addressing your body reaction, is to do what's known as muscle relaxation. So again, when the adrenaline's pumping through our body, we tense up, our muscles tense up. Different people experience it in different ways. Sometimes it might be in your shoulders or your arms, your chest might feel tight. But if you physically tense your muscles and then hold that for 5 seconds and then relax them, like physically, consciously relax your muscles, and notice when you do that, how different it feels when it feels relaxed. And then if you practice doing that, then you'll begin to notice when you are tense, when you are beginning to tense up, and you can actually physically relax those muscles that tense up more easily. So moving on to anxious thinking. I know that your concerns are really very real, but we can let our worries spiral, and when our worries begin to spiral and anxiety becomes a problem, we find ourselves overestimating the danger that's out there, kind of exaggerating that and underestimating our ability to cope. So thinking you can't manage. So the kind of thoughts that might pop into your head might be everyone's going to get COVID-19, that everyone will need so much extra help. The children would have forgotten everything. So really kind of overestimating those problems, which are there to an extent, but we might find ourselves exaggerating those. And then we underestimating our ability to cope, which I think happens even more often. I won't manage. We can't do it. I can't cope. So those kind of, even if those, you're not overestimating the danger, if you've got very real things that you're worried about, you may be finding yourself saying, I just can't do this. We can't do it. And that's underestimating your ability to cope. So it's just important to remember with anxious thinking that the thoughts aren't facts. We can often confuse things that come into our head as this is real, when actually thoughts are just thoughts. They aren't facts. They're something we can question. So how do we manage those anxious thoughts that are running through our head? So notice them. The first step is to notice the worries that you're having, and then question the truth and usefulness of them. Are they realistic worries? Am I actually catastrophizing? Can these problems be addressed? And then think about problem solving, thinking about what you can do to address those problems. The key thing to do is to share your worries. If you hold on to them on your own, you often end up building them up into something bigger than they need to be, and they become feel unmanageable. If you arrange buddies at school to talk through the worries, somebody you trust and you can talk to, then think through what those worries are. Be compassionate with one another. So COVID-19, this new situation, does present new challenges, but it's important to remember that the many challenges you've overcome in the past. Remind yourself what helps you to cope, that you have coped in so many difficult situations in the past. So if those thoughts are still there, those worrying thoughts are still there, you've kind of questioned them, you've looked at whether they can be addressed, tried to problem solve them, talk them through with other people, reminded yourself that you can cope in difficult situations. Try not to push them away. Because when we push away thoughts and worries, and we actually physically try and push those thoughts away, they actually become bigger. It actually becomes more of a problem. So what we need to try and practice doing is to acknowledge those thoughts and worries. I am worried about this happening, but then it is just a thought, it's just a worry, and let them go. So to help you remember is Elsa singing that famous song. I'm not going to break into song, but the thoughts might not be real anyway. You can imagine how it might go. So let them go. Okay, so moving on to anxious behaviour. If you remember, the original reason for the adrenaline or fight or flight response was to escape from danger. So it's understandable that we want to run away or hide when we have these feelings. We want to avoid going into school, maybe avoid talking to others. Or we might be asking others for their reassurance that things will be okay, to try and avoid taking responsibility for the experience, for what you do and what's happening. But that's where it's not very helpful to follow what your body's telling you to do always. Actually, what's really important when you're feeling anxious is, as much as possible, is to face our fears, to see how you can manage. We can't do it all on our own, and we do need to look after yourself and accept support and think about what help you might need to do it, but really try your best not to avoid those kind of situations. Okay, so building resilience to cope. So we've talked about anxiety and the kind of practical things you can do with anxiety, but now I want to move on to just more generally building resilience to cope. So you can see from the quote there, self-care is not selfish. You cannot serve from an empty vessel. So before we can help other people, we need to help ourselves. We need to feel strong in ourselves. You can think of yourself as a jug from which you pour to help others. If you don't look after yourself or keep your jug topped up, you'll have nothing to offer. So these are the kinds of things that can be really helpful to keep that jug full. Sleep and rest, so relax, eat regularly and healthily. Talk to people you trust and allow yourself to be comforted. So these are all things I'm sure you're very aware of, but just really important to keep in mind, particularly at the moment. Trying to reduce outside demands, so things that aren't completely necessary. Try and reduce doing that and trying to take on not too many extra responsibilities. Learning to say no when you can. Try scheduling digital power off times. That can be really powerful, just to have some time with nature if possible, to go for a walk, hug a tree. But connecting with nature does improve our well-being and our resilience. Use some relaxation strategies. So like the ones I've mentioned already, doing that controlled breathing, doing some muscle relaxation can be really helpful. There are other ways that you can relax. Some people enjoy things like yoga or Pilates, that kind of thing. Or there are apps that you can use to try and do some meditation or mindfulness. It's also important to build in opportunities for recognising hope and positive strength. In challenging times and when we're feeling stressed and worried, often what we do is we focus on the negative things. We focus on things that you're finding hard. So actually making a practical, concerted effort to look for hope and positive situations. Sometimes writing a diary, noticing 3 good things that you've appreciated, that you've been grateful for that day. That's been found to be really helpful because it's shifting your focus to be focusing on the positives. Reflecting on things that have happened with self-compassion. So that's being kind to yourself. So when things haven't gone so well, or when you're feeling stressed, we can quite easily be quite hard on ourselves and beat ourselves up. And I think it's really important to not to do that, to try and be kind to ourselves and to recognise these are difficult times and we're doing our best. I'm sure you're doing your best in the difficult situations. And finally, to allow yourself experience of sadness, grief. Those feelings are important. And it's important to connect with them. And sometimes that can help you bring other people to help comfort you as well. So in terms of the flip side of building resilience, it's important to try and avoid these things. So as you can see from the guy in the picture there, bottling up feelings really doesn't help. He's really not looking very happy there. Because actually those feelings tend to grow. They don't go away without thinking about them or talking about them. They stay there and build. So finding a way not to bottle up feelings, to share those feelings. Other things that people sometimes do is they feel embarrassed by thoughts or feelings, or they feel embarrassed about how other people are responding. If you can try to realize that we're all in this same situation, that actually it's okay to have feelings and it's really good to share, and it's okay for other people to have feelings, that and just trying to manage that in the best way that you can as an individual. One of the other things that people do is like hiding away that we were talking about before. If you isolate yourself from people you trust or feel safe around, those feelings are going to become really overwhelming. It's really important to connect, particularly at the moment, even though we can't physically see the people that you might want to. And then avoidance strategies. So avoidance strategies, things like alcohol, drugs, they like the odd glass of wine, that's, you know, that's fine, but like it's trying to, when you notice that you're relying on alcohol, you're relying on drugs, relying on something that kind of shuts down all those feelings, shuts down the ability to think about things, that's when, I'm sure you're very aware already, but that's when things can become really problematic. Okay, so what might be helpful during this period at school? So what could you do actually in the school environment? So all schools, I guess, will have their own ways that they're already looking after each other, and I'm sure many of you are doing this already. But it is, particularly in stressful times like this, important to think about how else you can support each other in school. So I've talked about buddies already, so I'm saying buddy up. So that means to think about having a buddy in a school. So actually physically talk to other people, work out who can be your buddy. Maybe that can be organised somehow in your school. So you can check in with each other at various times if you need to. It can be that person that you talk through challenges with and work through ideas together. The second one here is talk to each other. Sounds similar, but instead of just having a buddy, but actually just talking to each other more generally, supporting each other more generally. So like the staff room can be a real sanctuary in times like this when things are feeling difficult. When bringing in, like there it says, simple solutions are the best, tea and biscuits. Like it never hurts to bring in a few snacks and treats to share and to try and come together for a quick catch up at break time. So making sure again that you're connecting with each other, supporting each other, even if it's just through having a cup of tea and a biscuit and a little catch up together. And the third one here is mindfulness-based activities, which I mentioned already, but these can be things that you can use in the moment. Like, so when you're in school, you may only have the odd moment, but to help you stop, clear your mind for a few seconds, focus on your breath perhaps, and carry on again. So that could be using some of the breathing techniques. It could be using some mindfulness, a mindfulness app that, like Headspace, there's quite a few that are available that are recommended. And just trying to stop focusing on all the stresses and worries for that moment and focus on your breath, or just move away from those worrying thoughts. The other thing that's really helpful is linked into the buddy kind of idea, but it can be not just with a particular buddy, it could be with other staff in the school, is to have supportive conversations. And this might come up, so in terms of when more children come back, they might have had really particularly stressful or frightening experiences during this pandemic. And it's going to be challenging. Hearing their stories, it can lead to stress symptoms in yourself. And you can sometimes, teachers, when they're hearing some of the stories of the students, they can kind of take on some of that anxiety or the feelings of helplessness and anger that those young people might be feeling. So to help cope, it's really important to talk about those feelings that you might be having in supportive conversations. So what is a supportive conversation? So it's about, first step is really offering your time and attention. So these aren't just the ones that you can just have quickly in a tea break, and there isn't much time when you're in the middle of trying to look at your phone, mark something. These are actually offering people a time when you can actually fully give them your attention. So put that marking down, put your phone away, make them a cup of tea, sit down, make sure you have got giving them your full attention. And then actively listen. So I'm sure you're very good, you're very good at listening, real good listening, but actively listen is a really, you've got to actually quite work hard at it. You kind of focus in on them, look at them, actually demonstrate your listening. It's really powerful when people actively listen and they repeat back some of what you said. You summarize what you've understood from what they've said. That shows that you're really definitely listening to what they've said. And finally, you need to be able to show compassion. So that means being understanding, empathetic, non-judgmental and accepting. So trying to really put yourself in their shoes, to think this person is doing their best. They're finding it difficult. They're doing their best. How can you come alongside them and help them to manage those feelings? So it's a big responsibility, what teachers and schools are doing at the moment, especially when we acknowledge that a lot of adults, a lot of the teachers and adults in the school community are also experiencing lots of a massive range of emotions, similar to the young people and their families. You might have experienced bereavements yourself or loss. You might be caring for somebody who's shielding or living with a frontline NHS staff. You might have other stresses going on in your home at the moment. So anxiety and worry is a shared experience for many, but your role is so pivotal. So I've tried to build a wall here underneath these happy looking children. So in terms of the key things that I think that schools and teachers offer, which are so crucial. So you inspire hope, you offer comfort. You are positive role models to those children and young people and their families. You offer consistency, which is incredibly important. You inspire resilience by coping with these challenging situations yourself and showing how, while you're managing, or the strategies that you're using, you're inspiring resilience in those children, young people as well. School is a safe place for many people when sometimes it isn't in other places. The stability of being able to go to school is really important. And you enable recovery. So offering this environment and yourselves in all these roles enables recovery of people, children and young people from this tricky time. So yes, so important. And these are all really good reasons to help to manage your anxiety and your stress, build your resilience to keep going. So what next? So as you can see, this lady is ready for a run. So I've given you some ideas and some strategies that you might be able to use to try and help you manage at the moment. And I really want you to put into place something different rather than just watching this video and moving on to the next thing. I want you to really put some of these things in place. I've mentioned buddies already, so I'm going back to the buddy. So come up with your buddy, find somebody within your school if possible. If that's not possible, somebody at home, but identify somebody you can make a plan with so that you can think together about what you're going to do, how you're going to change to help you manage and cope with this difficult time. And then think back about the things that I've talked about today. So if you feel stressed or anxious at school, what strategies are you going to use to cool down or relax? How are you going to prepare yourself for these ideas? And once you've thought about that, tell your body, maybe think about them with your body. Think about 3 things you're going to do to look after yourself and build your resilience. Think about what day you're going to do that, what time, where you're going to be. Are there going to be challenges that you need to overcome to be able to make these things happen? Write down how you felt after doing some of them. See which ones work. If some of them might work better for you than others. Tell your body. And finally, thinking about the things you might do in school to improve your ability to cope with these challenges. Who might you need to get on board? What are the first steps you're going to take towards this? And tell your body. Thank you for your time. I hope you found it helpful.